If Russia and China are in a military alliance with each other and we enter World War III, I want people to understand what that means. That means the United States of America, as we know it, could cease to exist.
Good morning and God bless. We're in North Carolina. It is a Saturday morning, and I'm saying that I just watched this video from Valuetainment, Vivek Ramaswamy, and he said something, whether you agree with him or not on his political views or not is not the issue. He said something that I've been preaching to my family for the last few years. And let me tell you where we're at now in life. Let me turn this down just a little bit. Let me tell you, it is so serious. It is so serious. I always watch these videos, especially in America, particularly in the black community now, trying to build wealth, which is a great thing. But these things that talk about generational wealth. And I've said for years, there's no such thing as generational wealth if another country invades and destroys America as we know it. Do you think China, if they were to invade, or Russia to invade, and they took power of U.S., would honor your dollar system? Have we ever honored people's dollar system? Listen, tune in right now. It's probably an hour to interview. The segment I'm looking at is 10 minutes, but I'm going to just give you clips of it. I'll send you the link. I'm telling you, if you love your babies, if you love your grandchildren, if you love yourself, if you love your country, if you love the Chinese, if you love the Russians, if you love humanity, then let's not have a World War III. No one wins. But what Vivek says is true. If we enter this World War III, America as we know it may cease to exist. That's been my talking point. Let's get into it.
One thing we're doing right now that increases the risk of world war is that our policies are driving Russia further into China's hands.
So true.
And in order to have a world war, what you need is at least two different superpowers, neither of whom can obviously prevail in victory over another one. I think that the U.S. vis-a-vis China alone, or the U.S. vis-a-vis Russia alone, actually is objectively going to be stronger than each alone. But if Russia and China are allied, as we're forcing them to be, and I'll explain how, then they could arguably outmatch the United States, because Russia has nuclear capacity ahead of that of the U.S. Russia has hypersonic missile capabilities ahead of the U.S. What is hypersonic missile? Travel faster than the speed of sound, carrying potential nuclear loads that could hit the United States. China's naval capacity is arguably ahead of that of the United States, and we then depend on China's economy for our modern way of life. And so China and Russia are already in an alliance with one another, but we're driving Russia further into China's hands. How? By isolating Russia economically, so they need more China. If we've cut off the West, they need to actually depend on China economically. How? We're arming Ukraine to the teeth to fight Russia. That's why China's arming Ukraine. That's why China's then arming Russia. Again, driving them further into China's hands militarily. Economically and militarily, the policies we have adopted are driving Russia further into its military alliance with China. We made a commitment. James Baker, the U.S. Secretary of State, did in 1990 to Gorbachev, who led the USSR, that NATO would expand not 1 inch. Okay. It's like Ronald McDaniel's not 1 cent commitment to me. Not 1 inch past East Germany. Well, we haven't kept that. NATO's expanded more after the fall of the USSR than it has ever after. Again, then encircling Russia, or at least from Putin's perception, driving then further into a need for military alliance with China. So that's the number one precipitating factor here, is the Russia-China alliance that raises the risk of World War III. And then if you combine that with these vague rules of proxy war, right? The vague rules of proxy war are, well, we're saying in the Middle East that if somebody pays a group to hit somebody who's allied with us, that gives us the right to preemptively hit them. If we do that and act on that, that automatically is then Russia's justification for doing the same in return to us. And then if I'm U.S. president, I have to stick to my principle, because if you hit us, I will hit you back 10 times harder, whoever you are, and I will always keep that. Well, then we hit Russia 10 times harder than they hit us. That's World War right there, allied with China. Right. And by the way, the wild card in all of this is you have nuclear weapons involved. We have the first nuclear non-proliferation agreement that's absent. It's the first time we've had no nuclear non-proliferation agreement between the U.S. and Russia since the early 1970s. And then China's sitting here when we're wearing thin in Ukraine and the Middle East to go after Taiwan, which is in our vital interest. So again, here I've done something that no other presidential candidate has. I'm clear. We will defend Taiwan. That's different than the U.S. policy in both parties right now, which is strategic ambiguity. I think we need strategic clarity. Draw that red line. We will defend Taiwan at least until, for the foreseeable future, at least until we have achieved semiconductor independence. Because if China's squatting on the semiconductor supply chain, then they have an economic gun to our head.
Look how everybody's paying
attention. Using that
attention.
phone, that computer, that camera, these lights. We have to depend on China and ask them for permission.
Yeah, one company, TSMC, is the linchpin until all of the chip fabs get built in the United States and the brain power that's going to be designing those chips are back in the United States.
Or at least in Korea and Japan and the United States.
Yeah, if you look at the market share of global reliance, Taiwan is the most overweight in any industry you could ever lay out.
Totally. And it's sad that we got to where we are, but we are where we are. And so my view is that then becomes a precipitating factor because, again, it's strategic vagueness, right? China doesn't know what we're going to do. Versus if you say outright, no, you do not do this for the foreseeable future, at least until we're semiconductor independent. And after that, we will resume our current position of strategic ambiguity. A current position, resume it later. This is how you avoid World War III. And I'm deeply worried that we have, and I know that was a lot going on there, and so, there's a lot of different factors, and foreign policy is complicated, and I understand why the likes of the neocon hawks like Nikki Haley would say, I feel dumber every time you speak. Yep, I understand you can't process all of that because you want to go to war and make money and put more money in your bank account as a consequence of it. I get
I'm
that.
not
That's
laughing
fine.
at her,
People
but that
should never
was a
come
funny
within spitting
joke.
distance of the White House. But we are closer to World War III than we have ever been in any of our lifetimes in this room, of those of us who are in this room. And I think that requires a president who at least states that as a commitment and has a clear vision of how to do it.
And Vivek, funny that it's not funny, but you were talking right when you said China, Russia, and that alliance. Just 2 days ago, Putin met with the senior Chinese general, and they're hailing ties of growing military ties.
Yep.
That was just 2 days ago.
And they're doing joint military exercises off the coast of Alaska.
Right now they're doing that.
It's
that
literally,
crazy?
this is, people here in this country, we have been lulled into submission. So if everything I said isn't scary enough, let me just say one more thing to wake people up. World War III is scary, but I want to now put a fine point on this.
Listen.
This is not hyperbole. If Russia and China are in a military alliance with each other and we enter World War III, I want people to understand what that means. That means the United States of America, as we know it, could cease to exist.
Let me stop right there. I'll send the link. This video is so profound. Listen, he's telling the truth. America, our military, even though we've claimed for the last 20 years we are the most superior military power in the world, and there'll be some that would like to argue that point. Fine. We can argue that at a later date. The manpower of China and Russia alone. Let me rewind real fast. Let's say that we take the government's report of 9/11, that 19 crazy Arabs that were at a strip club the night before got on some planes with some box cutters and ran these planes into the building and did this to us in this superior military power. Then how in the hell do you plan on stopping China and Russia together? October 7th. If what they say happened in October 7th, then I condemn it. However, like I condemn the attacks on 9/11, like I condemn any attacks on civilians or innocent people, non-combatant people. I hate war. I hate war. Let me make that clear. I hate war. Now, being a somewhat analytical person that likes to look at the data, I have a few questions for the next video. Just something to think about. If these Arabs were able to come into our country and do 9/11, think what military powers can do to us. He goes on later to say that we are really unprotected, and this will be the first time for any of us, whether you were 70 and younger. I mean, unless you were old enough for Pearl Harbor, you have never experienced what the Palestinian people have experienced. you have never experienced what the Israeli people or the Afghani people or the Iraqi people. You don't know what it's like to go in your house and step outside and your house is obliterated by a bomb. We don't know that. As wicked as that is, we should condemn that. We don't want that for our children. This is The Spill with Spillman. Tune in. I thank you for your donations. I tried to stay out of this arena for right now. I tried to concentrate on the reacting to music. However, being a political science major and my heart is a lover of humanity, I have to cast my hat into the argument. What Vivek says is right. America will cease to exist. We do not want World War III. God bless, and I'm praying for peace. I'm sending a message of solidarity to our Chinese, our Russian, our Afghani, our Taiwanese. I'm sending a message of solidarity to people around the world. Don't let our politicians and people that are war hungry drive our sons and daughters into a senseless war. This is Sharon with Sean Spillman combined with The Spill with Spillman. Leave your comments and reviews. God bless.